Now that Pope Francis has died, the Vatican is rushing. In order to prevent chaos or worse, everything must be carefully synchronized. With centuries of expertise, the Vatican has witnessed the worst. For this reason, it follows exact procedures, confirming the Pope's death, relocating him to St. Peter's, and planning the conclave down to the hour and day. Time is of the essence. Prior to anything else, it is necessary to verify if the Pope is indeed deceased. Verifying that the Pope is indeed dead comes before everything else. This confirmation, which was formerly conducted by Vatican authorities in the chamber where he passed away, is now conducted in his private chapel. There, the prelate in charge of the Holy See's assets and income, Cardinal Camerlengo, assumes leadership of the Vatican until a new pope is elected. He is going to follow the silver hammer procedure. This used to entail yelling the deceased pontiff's baptismal name 3 times and pounding his skull with a little silver hammer. It was an easy concept. You're most likely dead if you don't wake up when someone hammers you in the skull. At least until the early 1900s, when Leo XIII died in 1903, the silver hammer was in use. You may be happy to learn that Pope Francis has not been subjected to it, even if it may have persisted till John XXIII's death 60 years later. "George, are you dead?" was still yelled by the Camerlengo, who is now Kevin Cardinal Farrell, 3 times. Cardinal Farrell said, "I declare that His Holiness Pope Francis is truly dead," as George was clearly not responding. In order to be certain, the Camerlengo may proceed with an electrocardiogram, not a hammer. This is how the death of John Paul II was verified by science in February 2005. Pope Francis's corpse was immediately put in an open casket when his death was confirmed. Are you old enough to recall the funeral of John Paul II? Despite the fact that this is a recent change, his body would have been visible to you. It was set up in a raised bier known as a deathbed or canaletto. In November of 24, Pope Francis reversed the decision to place Pope Benedict XVI on one as well. Soon, more on it. For the time being, Camerlengo and his men started taking care of the Pope's valuables to prevent theft, and promptly locked the Apostolic Palace. This custom originated at an era when the likelihood of someone taking the deceased Pope's belongings was far higher than it is now. To maintain the integrity of the Pope's office, some objects are intentionally destroyed. The first item to disappear would have been the fisherman's ring. This is how it used to seem. As you can see, like all previous popes, Francis wore a special ring that was used to seal important papers. Although it may not seem like much now, official seals were essential in the past for papers to be considered valid, and the Vatican still follows this custom. To stop forgeries, Cardinal Farrell had Francis's ring burned. The same silver hammer that used to tap dead popes on the head was responsible for the devastation until recently. However, things may have altered now. Benedict XVI's ring was conveniently broken apart in the shape of a cross, rather than shattered up when he abdicated in February 2013. In any event, Cardinal Farrell demolished the ring in front of several cardinals of high rank. Having witnesses who can attest to the fact that this ring was destroyed is beneficial. From this point on, all documents sealed in that pattern are recognized as fakes. Additionally, the Pope's lead seal was damaged. All other property is either archived, donated, or in very rare circumstances passed on to the Pope's successors. The Vatican must be ready for the public grieving period after ensuring the safety of the deceased's corpse and essentials, but not all popes had the same ideas about how to achieve this. The Pope's body is usually embalmed. John XXIII is the greatest example from the contemporary era. He was embalmed with formalin, which is a formaldehyde and methanol solution. His body was very well preserved when it was unearthed in February 2001. Cardinal Virgilio Nodi then said that it appeared as though he had passed away just yesterday. However, embalming is not required. John Paul also declined to participate. Francis's choice will be based on his individual preferences. The Swiss guards who will accompany the Pope on his last trip from the Apostolic Palace to St. Peter's Basilica will need to be present. Since Julius II asked for their presence in 15 o'clock, the Swiss guards have been keeping the Pope safe. In-depth doesn't end there. All day and night, the guards keep vigil over the Pope's body, their heavy armor and spikes in place. The Swiss Guards' refusal to leave Benedict XVI's side after the lights in St. Peter's were ordered to be turned off was a recent example of this dedication to duty. They most likely recalled the events of 1527, when 147 Swiss Guards serving under Holy Roman Emperor Charles V sacrificed their lives to defend Pope Clement VII from 20,000 assailants. They will undoubtedly be at Francis's side throughout these times as well, but just where will he be? 3 distinct coffins were in use until recently, oak-laid and cypress ones. However, Francis, who was known for his modesty, felt that this was too excessive, so his remains was placed in a plain wooden coffin coated with zinc, which will be on public display in St. Peter's for 3 days. The Pope will make his final trip to his final resting place on day 4. St. Peter's still houses the remains of several popes. Beneath it is a necropolis, a real city of the dead. Since it was illegal inside the old city walls, the Romans would bury their dead in these necropoli outside. Would you not be aware that one of them is right over the present-day location of St. Peter's? Francis will not be interred in the Vatican's vault. Unlike other popes, the Basilica of St. Mary Major is located here. Francis declared that it will be his last resting place in December 2023. Although uncommon, this is not unheard of. One of Rome's 7 pilgrim churches, and one of the 4 main papal basilicas, is St. Mary Major. Since becoming pope, Francis has visited there more than 100 times. There are already 6 of his predecessors buried there: Pius V, Sixtus V, Honorius III, Nicholas IV, Clement VIII, and Clement IX. It is vintage even if it isn't new, very vintage. In 1669, Clement IX was laid to rest here, and no pope has come after him since. Even in death, the pope will have better protection than the Swiss Guards. Even though the specifics are kept hidden by nature, the Vatican and all of its inhabitants, including the dead, are protected by sophisticated monitoring systems. Pope Francis will be properly honored, therefore the Vatican will now focus on a much less assured task: selecting his successor. The College of Cardinals will spend 3 days getting ready for a conclave 1 week following Pope Francis's death. Although the term suggests secrecy, it wasn't always that way. It followed a 3-year-long election. The cardinals convened in the isolated town to select Clement VI's successor following his death in December. It was a handy location with a lower danger of illness. However, the people quickly became irate. It was taking much too long. To force the cardinals to make a choice, they had to use drastic tactics, such as denying them everything except bread and water, or even taking off the top of their building, so they would have to face the weather. Leave now. Gregory X was ultimately selected in September 1271, but there was a catch. Not that he was a cardinal, not that he was a priest. It took him 8 months to go to the Vatican while on a crusade. Thankfully, things are much less problematic today. Gregory codified Viterbo's custom by directing that if a conclave went longer than 3 days, the cardinals would only receive 1 supper each day. Additionally, secrecy gained a lot of importance. In December, the covert papal conclave was formally set up. Prior to then, the cardinals were free to discuss it with anybody they wished, and in the early 1900s, Pope Pius X instituted a secret ballot. Today, the people would be unable to rip off the building's roof. The area used for conclave is closed off. Cardinals are also shut off. They aren't even permitted to view the news, much less use a computer or phone to communicate with others. What about these? To stop signals from passing through, the Vatican set up Faraday cages in cars with jammers during the most recent conclave in 2013. In order to prevent the existence of invasive drones, there will likely be more jammers presently. Although these actions may appear a bit drastic, they were effective. How much longer will it take us to notice the white smoke this time? It just took 1 day, from March 12th to March 13th, for the conclave to elect Pope Francis. Additionally, Benedict XVI's conclave in February 2005 only lasted 1 day. However, that does not imply that there is just one round. If a candidate receives a 2/3 majority from the College of Cardinals, he will be elected. Given that the next pope will be among them, perhaps that won't be as difficult as it was from December to December. The last pope to not come from the college was Urban VI in 1378, however it is not required. There will be a lot of black smoke like this even if the cardinal electors know one another. Pope Francis was elected after 5 polls. Black smoke emanated from the Vatican 4 times prior to then, indicating that no new pope had yet been appointed. What gives the black smoke its hue? It is often composed of small particles of carbon, but the white smoke that heralds the coming of a new pope is composed of mineral ash, fuel vapor or water vapor. However, what takes place prior to the release of that white smoke? The victor will be asked if he accepts his election by the College of Cardinals. If so, the white smoke will be released into the air when he is requested to adopt the papal name. Behind the scenes, the freshly chosen pope will don the customary white robes. In the meanwhile, the senior cardinal deacon will declare, "We have a pope from St. Peter's balcony." The next pope will then address the congregation below from the balcony, marking his public debut. Following the public speech, the pope will return inside to speak to the cardinals' college, thanking them for their service and officially ending the conclave. Soon after his election, the next pope will select a date. This used to be a serious event with intricate crowning ceremonies. However, that hasn't happened in a long time. Francis, Benedict XVI, John Paul I, and John Paul II all chose modest inauguration rituals because they didn't want such a show. Do you believe the next pope will do the same, or do you think something bigger may emerge? For now, goodbye.